Hi, everyone. This is Henry Gordon Smith from Agritecture here, and we're back for an exciting conversation as part of our mission to share the future of climate smart agriculture, controlled environment agriculture, and urban ag, all the stuff you love. And today, joining me for this conversation is Sayon, who's the founder and CEO of Advanced Autoponics. Sayon, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Henry?
I'm pretty good. I'm on my way to Indoor AgCon. This probably be published after that event, but it's exciting to go to the sort of premier North America indoor farming event. I'm going to see a lot of familiar faces, almost like a family reunion, and also learn a lot. I'm going to be speaking on a panel about what CA farmers can learn from field farmers, which should be interesting. And yeah, like I said, networking and meeting suppliers and contacts and all of that. What about you? What's new in your life?
Oh, just been staying busy. I think 2026 we're looking for, a good year here. A lot of exciting things happening over the next few months. Is there anything in particular that you're interested in seeing in AgCom this year or?
I think the whole industry is what I call the paradox stage, where we've got like the trough of disillusionment that we're getting out of from the Gartner hype cycle that I wrote about in a popular 2021 Ag Funder article. That's the framework I look at the industry. And I did some predictions, sourcing from experts from around the industry, and there's some interesting perspectives about consolidation of greenhouses and them going to be bigger in North America. There's some people predicting that vertical farming is now going to be integrated more into healthcare and infrastructure and data centers. There's some people that say the hype stage is over and now we're really going to focus on quality and nutrition. So I'm really interested to hear, and see the level of optimism and, is it authentic? Are people just doing it for marketing, or is there really the fundamental, authentic optimism that's necessary for an industry like ours to be resilient and to get through this challenging stage? So I'm also looking for clients, obviously, people that want to work with Agritecture for our feasibility studies, and also some of our existing clients will be there, including Solum Technologies, which is a client that I work with on their dynamic lighting and marketing their products, which is a really cool solution. So I've got a lot to catch up. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think, that's something that we see big in 2026 is, we kind of started quite a few years back and we try to get into the market, head down, getting out there. But, as you mentioned, there's a lot of like investment that was poured into it with a lot of VC money and things like that. So we're kind of a small company and we're, trying to go after some, bigger potential clients. And we just saw a lot what you were seeing with, VC funding. At the time, we kind of started to pivot a little bit outside of the market and a lot of people were making their own hardware, their own software. We even joined a call once, and there were multiple people making their own hardware and software. And it was just like, if you guys could team up, that'd be amazing. And, we've always been, we have these controllers, control systems, this whole architecture to kind of tie that all in together. Um, and that was hard for people to understand, I think, at that time because there was so much money into it. A lot of people were really like gung-ho about it. But now, after things have scaled back, we're actually seeing a huge opportunity for what people are looking for in our technology, a modular control system that could talk multiple protocols as well. Um, so we could talk to like BackNet. So you mentioned like people are looking to like do healthcare and things like that. So if we want to tie into like a hospital system or a building system, so that's what we're really excited about this year is kind of the opportunities coming from less focus and less money pouring into the segment actually. So.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really important themes. One of them being sort of collaboration, and that's so important in our industry, openness on data and technology and collaboration. And I think the other one is integration, right? Like these farms that were sort of reinventing the wheel and trying to do everything and spending, so much money on R&D versus going to other suppliers. I think that stage is kind of over, which is really, I think, good. And the sort of scarcity of financing and funding and the challenges are leading people to adapt to more collaborative, more openness. And I really hope that trend continues as well as the integration trend versus the reinvention trend. So let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Advanced autoponics. Give me
Yeah.
the pitch. What is it and why should people know about it?
So, we're a control systems company essentially, right? We get problems from people. They're like, "Hey, we want to automate this, but we want to do it quickly. We want a rapid development and rapid deployment." So, we've had clients who just call us out and they need a week to get a system up and running. So we work with them, we do a walkthrough, we look at what they need, we look at, what sensors need to be utilized, if they need pumps, where they need the water flowing, if they need that, whatever they kind of need, we kind of scope that out. And we build a control system architecture around that we can quickly deploy. The other thing too is that since we use things that are known to, electricians, electrical engineers, and things like that, our system is very easy to fix, right? So if you have a relay, it's not like some special relay. If something in our hardware goes down, it's hot swappable, so you can just remove it, put it back together. And on top of all that, like I was mentioning earlier, we talk all these different protocols. So instead of having like decentralized systems that can't talk to each other, we are allowed to talk to like any protocol. Right now, we're working with LoRaWAN and things like that. So we can easily integrate to all these systems that makes it, gives them the ability to pull data from different places and tie things together. It's not like you have one system here, one system there, multiple systems that can't talk to each other. I think the beauty of where people need to go with this is kind of, a centralized system or multiple systems that can actually talk to each other. So we kind of do, from day one, we like scope, we do electrical panel design and then a control systems architecture of what you want to program, how you want to kind of automate your facility. And then on top of that, we create like a UI HMI that can be iterated on. And it only takes, sometimes like a week or two. So it's very quick. And that's also because we know the systems. So that's kind of where we stand in the market today. So.
So that's an interesting value proposition. It sounds like you have got the value proposition of speed. You've got the value proposition of matching industry standards as part of this. So that's going to make integration, whether it's a co-location between a building or various pieces, or even just something that mechanical support, technical people can understand and fix. And then you sort of have, I think, some sort of low cost element to this to some extent. Not to say it's cheap, but those two factors probably drive down costs for the customer. Did I capture that? Is there anything else in the value proposition that you want to emphasize?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. So, that's where we really see ourselves today in the market. And I think, like, like we just talked about a few times, with the VCs kind of exiting, we see more interest in it because it does hit the value in weeks rather than years. Um, so that's a big thing, like I'll give you an example, right? We had a customer call us in and they're like, "Hey, we want to be able," I can't talk too much on what they wanted, but they wanted to do like an infrared cure system, right? So they had these infrared lights and they're like it was like a test system that they wanted, so they're like, we have this motor, we just want to like run this thing through, uh and we need to automate the lights at different paces to see how fast it can cure. And they didn't even have the control panel, they didn't have the parts, they didn't have everything. So we got out there in a week's time, we were actually able to give them like an HMI to do all their functional testing. We had the control panel fully live and all UL rated as well. I think that's a big thing for us is, the specifications for the markets is also important. So, in the EU, you have your ratings, and in the United States, you have UL ratings. So that's kind of the speed of iteration that we kind of like really hone in on. Um, and that's, I think, is a huge value proposition. Also, the stability of our systems is, just once it runs, as long as nobody's messing with the code, it just keeps going. So.
Those are good. So tell me a little bit more about, without naming names if you can't, some of your customers. Just give me a couple of other examples of customers and how you've solved their problems.
Yeah, so we work with a few growers who they had different systems that they were using to kind of automate their process, right? So I think two things in automation is, you can over automate, of course, but when you over automate, the cost goes up, right? So, how do you determine, what that value is? Because obviously in the markets that we're looking at in ag tech, we have to be very conscientious about how much, a grower is being charged, right? So we talked to this grower. He had multiple systems that he was using. He had a separate thing for lights. He had separate things for watering. You know, he had a separate thing to dose his, nutrients and things like that. So we kind of came together and put all of that together. We used his existing lights. We didn't have him replace them. He liked them. So we tied into those. We brought those in the control system. Then, we allowed him to then, you know, automatically enter when he wants his lights on and off, or what he wanted to is he wanted to shift the light periods over time. So we threw that in there, and he can pick how long he wants to keep in a certain, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Um, so things like that, we kind of bring things that are kind of distributed and kind of centralize them together. Another area that's been big, and I know that a lot of people have talked about, is like there's a lot of people in the space, but our ability to tie into LoRa to LoRaWAN sensors, and we see
What
that as
is
an
that? You
affordable.
can tell us what is that? What's a LoRaWAN
Uh,
sensor? Maybe I should
yeah,
know, but
so it's like a wireless sensor. So if
okay.
you think about, I come from like the industrial space where like everybody directly wires all their sensors. Everybody's scared of wireless. But if you're looking at farming, or you're looking at greenhouses and things like that, it's so expansive, right? That these wireless sensors make sense in this space.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times too, with like industrial machining, you need like high speed like feedback, if something's happening. But if you're just monitoring temperature and humidity or other like soil moisture, or things like that, you don't need that speed. So these wireless sensors allow these large operations to place these new sensors around their facility without having to go around and get an electrician to come in and
Yeah,
do
and all the
like
water, you're
conduit.
avoiding some of the issues with the water to some extent with that wiring, and yeah.
Exactly. So it's just, especially, again, for the space, you want to be conscientious. So that just enables them. So, we tie into the sensors like that. We've even, we were actually at CES. There's been a huge investment in the area actually for oil and gas. So I think we'll see that trickle over into ag tech as well. But you can like trigger things on and off. They have sensors for flow monitoring. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I know it's a big thing in many countries today. I think it's going to become bigger and bigger in the space. So.
Okay, so I work with a lot of clients that are building their first facility and some clients that are expanding their facilities and they're, thinking about the challenges of automation, right? So what are the first questions that people watching should ask when they're investigating and thinking about automation?
I think the first thing to do is like look at your process today, right? So what are you doing things today, and what are manual processes that you're doing today, and how much time are you focusing on those manual processes? How much time is that taking away uh, from your team? Are they? So I think you have to hone in on that. and then kind of look at if they have something already. You know, there's some people who are doing soil, there's some people who are doing hydroponics. So it really depends on, what people are utilizing to grow. But, how are you monitoring things today? What systems are you using today? Are they decentralized? Things like that. And then we kind of come in and try to figure out how we can tie that better in together and kind of reduce that manual, input from the users, from
Right.
the operators, I guess you could say. So I think that's where we focus on from
Yeah,
day
take a look
one.
at your process. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the pain points? What is the most expensive part of your process that could be automated? Maybe start with that or the most complex one. And then I'm sure you work with your customers to identify how realistic is that and what's the cost benefit ratio of automating this versus that. Very, very, very helpful in that sense. Let's move on to software a little bit because you're not only
Yeah.
experienced in the sort of sensor automation aspects of it, the controllers, but also on the software side. And obviously, the hot topic that continues to be hotter and hotter is artificial intelligence. And I'm just curious on your take on artificial intelligence and ag tech. What is it? What's the current state of it? Is it hype or is it ripe, as I like to say? And what does that future look like? And how could people think about that? Like, how should they, again, like the automation question, how should they investigate the AI role of this?
I think AI is an interesting piece. I think, a lot of people are obviously using it to speed up and clean up their emails. I think people are using it for content creation. Yeah, guilty. Um, so I think a lot of people are u utilizing in that sense. But I think, when it comes to ag tech and things like that, I think one of the things that people have to be aware of is when they're putting things into OpenAI like ChatGPT or other systems, they actually kind of consume that data. So one of the things that we've looked at is custom LLMs, right? Where you kind of you can use OpenAI, Claude, and other LLMs, but you kind of create an ecosystem where you don't allow them to take the data. Right. So I think a lot of people in any industry are data sensitive, right? So you don't want to, if you have a CSV file of your greenhouse and you're like, oh, make me some charts, make me, kind of analyze this data. I think you have to be a little careful. So one of the things that we've dove into, and I think you've seen it, is the ability to kind of create a custom LLM so that data isn't absorbed by these models and that it protects the companies and their data,
IP.
which I
Yeah.
think is, yeah, I think that's huge. I also see it in anomaly detections, and obviously vision AI is a huge thing
Yeah.
with AI.
Interesting.
It's like very easy for AI to grasp anomalies visually. There is a little bit of a it takes a little bit more time to do just data, like if the data coming in is starting to trend towards something bad, but it can be done, and I think it's interesting over time that the data collection process, um, if people have the right data and it's clean and it's not bad data, it can actually give you a lot of insights and it can kind of pre-warn you and do some like predictive things or at least tell you that something might be occurring, even though it might not be predictive. So I see that kind of being a big thing for the AI and kind of helping operators as well. If people put like user manuals and things like that, instead of searching through the user manuals, if you use like a custom LLM, you can actually get your operators to quickly find and like kind of troubleshoot without having to dig through tons of documentation. So that's where we kind of see it.
Yeah, super valuable insights on AI and ag tech. And I really like the emphasis on your own custom internal LLMs. And it's kind of exciting that it's getting cheaper and more possible. And it's something that we've been talking about. So those are Those are really, really valuable. And I think, it's really exciting that your firm, your organization can do both the sort of controller side and the software side, which is sort of a complete solution on the data infrastructure, the controllers, and the optimization capabilities and IP protection capabilities of AI. That's very, very clear and good insights. We're both entrepreneurs, right? And we're entrepreneurs in the sector. I mean, you work in a variety of sectors, but in the context of ag tech, it's sort of impact driven, sometimes challenging sector. But I find you to be a very, open and collaborative entrepreneur. And I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about your philosophy of entrepreneurship and, not all entrepreneurs are the same. And I'm just curious about why or how you would describe yourself as an entrepreneur. What's your philosophy of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think for me, I've been doing engineering for almost more than a decade now. I can't believe it went by that quickly. But so, I've spent lots of time in the field and sometimes, I've stayed up 24 hours if something was down and I spent maybe way too much time in the field. And I started to think like, like what's the benefits for humans, you know, uh, maybe sat by myself too long in those hotels, but you start to really think and deep dive, like, what's the benefit for all of humanity with what we're doing, right? And I always saw like ag tech as something that is super beneficial, right? So I think, it's not always about the money, right? And maybe, people hearing this are like, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur, you should be focusing on that." But I think it's about change,
Not
right?
only about the money, maybe.
Yeah, it's not only about the money, but I think it's about engineering a good product without over engineering it, and then also being able to like provide it to people, and for them to, my greatest thing is like, I did a lot of like UI, HMI developments. And my favorite thing is like working with the operator and him like looking at it and going like, oh, could you move this here? Could you just do this? And then he gets so excited about it. I think sorry, taking a step back, I think it's about just taking that product and really allowing people to, to spread it around the world. And especially in ag tech, making it affordable enough to do so, right? Um, so I think those are like key points is just like how do we change this world as it's today? How do we progress? How do we take technology that's now becoming more affordable and how do we implement that in ways that's meaningful to kind of change the landscape of where humans are going and how we can evolve all together versus just kind of keeping it all to ourselves. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, I think it does. I think we share that as far as I would call it generosity and democratization as a form of a greater good as part of the business model of entrepreneurship. I feel that alignment with you from the first moment we spoke as far as a philosophy of entrepreneurship that, there may be some short-term gains from keeping everything inside and not collaborating and not thinking about, being generous and open for this ultimate mission that we share, which is like, why are we doing this in the end, right? There's real reasons why we're doing this. But I think in the long term, especially through these ups and downs, I have faith in entrepreneurs like yourself and hopefully myself that generosity and collaboration and democratization and reduction of the cost of some of these essential products and services that are needed to help us adapt to the inevitabilities of climate change's effects on our food system is a passion that we seem to share. So thanks for sharing that, Sayon, with us. I'm really excited to watch your career and your work and also collaborate. And I just wanted to ask, where can people learn more about advanced autoponics if they want to get in touch with you to talk about controls and automation and AI for their farms?
yeah, so everybody can visit advancedautoponics.com, obviously. But you can also reach out to me, say on, just say on, and then C. as in cat, at advancedautoPonics.com. If anybody has got questions or wants to collaborate or has ideas, we're always open to, looking at what people want to do and kind of scoping out, how that architecture might look like, and then seeing how we can maybe move forward in implementing it. So, and Henry, I think, also I think just, thank you for having me and Advanced Autoponics on the call as well. I mean, I just pinged you randomly, a while back on LinkedIn, and you're well known, and I wasn't sure if you would ping me back, and you did so, and very quickly. So I think that shows, this space is good for collaborators, and you're never too big or too small, I think, in this space to collaborate with people. So
Yeah, I'm so glad we connected. And I do. I also try to respond to every message I get, believe it or not. And if it's a clear ask, it helps me a lot, give a clear response to that. So I really want to thank Sayon, founder and CEO of Advanced Autoponics, for joining us here for this agritecture conversation. Kind of related to what we're talking about in this generosity and sharing and democratization. I want to remind everyone that this is not a sponsored post or sponsored webinar. This is part of the conversations that I have with all kinds of solutions providers. If there's ever sponsored content on our blog or on my feed, I note it with hashtag sponsored or in partnership with, so you can know whether there is additional reasons why I'm creating the content. But this is a big part of my mission to help encourage you to have more success and find connections, relationships, technologies, and data to help you be successful, because it really is going to take all of us to respond to these global grand challenges. So thank you so much for following. Please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and check out Sayon at Advanced Autoponics.
thank you.
Okay, great.